Hello, everyone. This is, or hey, good afternoon, or whichever time zone you're in. This is Robert, and yeah, thank you for watching the podcast. And yeah, hope everybody's doing well and staying safe. I know apparently there's been like some storms that are happening like in the south and central US. So for all of my friends out there, stay safe. And yeah, since we are now on the first day of February, I cannot believe that January has come and gone. Um, the last month was certainly like, it was a blur. So nonetheless, we're still at the beginning of the new year. And yeah, um, but enough about all that. You just want to hear about this wonderful guest that I have sitting with me in the corner today. We have Mr. Steve Mackall. Please tell me I'm getting it right this time.
Oh, you got it right, man.
Okay, yes. Yeah, because on the show, I just keep getting people's last names mixed up for some reason. But yeah, thank you. Thank you for joining me today.
Oh, my pleasure, Robert. Thanks for having me in.
Yeah, anytime. So, yeah, it's been, it's a new year and everything. So I just wanted to ask you, how have these last few years been treating you? Because I know we've been in this wacky kind of thing that's been going on. So yeah, how would you describe the last few years for you?
Yeah,
What
a
you've been
little
up to?
alternate
Yeah,
universe. Yeah.
life. Yep, the
Yeah,
universe.
it's a good question, man. Well, you know what? Uh, I guess like all of us, or like a lot of us, certainly had to make some adjustments. But I saw it as just something that was upon us, so I kind of went with it. Um, and grateful to say that my business wasn't disrupted too badly. I work a lot remotely as a writer and as a voiceover person anyway, so that was obviously exacerbated by the pandemic. But I also one of the things that there was so many silver linings out of it. One of the things was like I really felt as a species, as a people, we all had a certain amount in common for a while. Like we were all super in touch with our fragile humanity, and everybody was sort of aware of where we were, and that we were trying to navigate this together. So I know that when I talk to people, my friends all over the country and all over the world, the first question was, how are you? How's your family? It was, and then people would share their COVID stories. So it was as challenging as it was. I think it was a time of great communion on a level, and I felt even more connected to my family and friends.
Oh yeah, totally. I guess I'm kind of the same way because yeah, ever since we've been into the whole like lockdown kind of I'm not even sure if we're like getting to the place where it's like, okay, so I know that it's like if somebody gets COVID now, it's like, oh yeah, I've had it too. But like back then, it was like kind of yeah, it was a really big deal. But now apparently, since everything's kind of easing up and we're slowly but surely, um, even though it still is gonna take a long while, we're kind of getting to the place where it's like, okay, so we know that with the vaccines and everything, getting COVID is not really as deadly as it was, but I don't know. I can't really speak for everyone, but
Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
at the end of the day, it's like, just still gotta keep yourself and your and all of your loved ones safe, from everything that's been going on. But yeah, this isn't really the podcast to talk about like, politics and whatnot, but
This is
yeah,
Death Cast. Yeah.
we just want to talk about you. So yeah. I've done, me, I like to do my research. I'm kind of like that Wikipedia type of
Yep.
guy. So, yeah, like just share a little bit about, um, growing up and then how it was for you and how you got started in this showbiz,
Okay.
type of stuff. Yeah.
Well, that's such a great question, man. To be honest, and I often say this when I speak to young people or somebody looking to get into the industry, I often ask, like, well, what did you like to do when you were little? Because I'm always curious, like, when you're a little kid, like you follow your passions just naturally. And I know as a little kid, for me, I loved making up voices, making up songs, making up stories. Every time my friends would come over, we'd all get down to the basement and I would go, here, wear this hat, wear this jacket. Okay, when you come through those doors, you got to be somebody other than you. So we were always playing and making stuff up. And for me, that was one of my greatest joys. And I thought, well, if I could do that for a living, wouldn't that be fun? And so that was the main impetus. Is I kind of carried my childhood joys and passions into my college years and beyond.
Yeah, right on. And how would you describe your college years? I'm not sure a lot of people really ask, like, how was your education? How was school and stuff?
Well, you know what? That's such a good question. My first college I went to was a small liberal arts college on the Mississippi River in Southern Illinois, and I went there with just an idea of like getting into communications. I didn't have anything that specific, and I kind of got involved in political science. That got very interesting to me. That was my first major for a year or so. But then, and this goes under the heading of like I always say, wear transparent blinders. Like keep your focus and move toward what you're interested in, but don't lose sight of the periphery. And I remember my year in college between sophomore or junior or freshman and sophomore year, my friend's band came to town and I hung out and spent the whole weekend with the band, and everybody was funny and interesting and clever. And we were playing music and telling jokes and stories. And after that weekend, I realized that was what I wanted to do. That felt like a lot of fun to me. And it took me back to my childhood where I was thinking to myself, yeah, music and laughter and stories and comedy. And that's what I love. So I went back to that school, changed my major, got into theater. And then after a year at that school, I transferred to Ohio University in Southern Ohio. And I got into radio and TV production and English and film and all the aspects of that, and started to really get into, it's one of the great things about university and college. You can get into so much. So I worked on the radio station and I helped people make short films, and it was just, even in those fledgling years, at least following that intuition of my highest excitement or my passions. And that led to, the budding little career I had when I first got out of college.
So I know that you were originally from the good old Canada. So how would you describe like, and I kind of asked this for people that are like that have moved from wherever, like internationally. So how would you describe the move from Canada to the United States?
Well, I wish I could answer that with any type of credibility, but God bless Wikipedia. They have me born on the wrong day, in the wrong month, in the wrong year, in the wrong city, in the wrong country. Yeah. So I was born it's not as sexy as Canada. I was born in Cleveland, Ohio.
Oh, Ohio.
That's where I grew up. But the route to how I got into LA from Cleveland was Cleveland, Austin, Texas, Washington, D.C., and then Los Angeles.
Okay, so let me let me just, replace that question with another one. So apparently like and I'm really hoping that Wikipedia is accurate for this one, but you were in a comedy contest in Washington, D.C. So you won a trip to LA and and I think that's kind of how you kind of got your start working in the LA scene.
Yes,
Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay. Copywriter. So yeah. So how did you actually stumble into voiceover out of curiosity? Because you've already done, stand up, you've done acting, comedian, did all of this stuff. So how did you get noticed for VO?
Well, that's a great question. When I was in Washington, D.C. doing stand-up comedy, I was also a salesman during the daytime for a guy who wrote and produced jingles and radio commercials. And so that guy was a great mentor. His name was Art Aarons. Art was a great mentor, and he let me help him write everything I sold as a salesman. So I helped him write commercials and jingles, but then I was also doing my stand-up at night. So a little bit of a circuitous answer, but I'll try to truncate it as much as possible. I did a stand-up comedy in Washington, D.C., won a comedy contest sponsored by HBO and the local radio station. That the first prize was come out to LA and attend the comic relief concerts, if you remember those shows back in the day with Robin Williams and Whoopi and Billy Crystal.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Those were the days.
Those were the days, man. So I came out and I
Yeah.
met everybody, and everybody said the same thing. All the great comedians said, well, you should be out in LA. So I did. I went back. I packed up my little pickup truck, drove across country, and I was got a job at a little ad agency. And this guy's name was Chuck Bloor. And Chuck was a legendary radio commercial producer, television commercial producer. And Chuck, even though he was so big, he was a very homespun guy. And so when we would write a commercial, he would say to me, Mackall, you're going to be the young father on this commercial. Get behind the mic. And I had no experience doing voiceover in a studio. I've been behind a microphone and stand up, but it's a different animal. So Chuck Bloor would let me audition and be in these commercials, even though I really had no experience in that. But I'll tell you, man, the most important direction Chuck ever gave me, he would hear me do my read, and then he would say, I don't believe you. And I went, wow, man, I don't believe you. So that's when I decided I better just be me and tell the story from my heart as myself. At least I'll have a shot at being authentic and being believable. And so if I had any kind of style or anything in voiceover, if I developed anything like that, it came from Chuck Bloor telling me to be myself, essentially. And then from there, I was hosting a party at Chuck's one holiday time, and I was telling some story, and a bunch of people were around and got a couple laughs. And this one woman came up to me after the story, and she said, do you do voiceovers? And I said, some. And she said, how would you like to do a lot? And that was my very first agent. So she signed me on the spot, and that was 1989, before you were born, Robert, back in the day.
Yeah, definitely. And also, before I was born, it just kind of read into me. But yeah, that was yeah, that was really interesting. It's like you mentioned, I don't believe you, and it's really interesting of how because because you do stand up, you've been, screenwriting and you've done theater, and it was like, making the transition into voiceover is kind of like oh wow. Um and as somebody who has like just stumbled into this, and that was like kind of the first like major critique that you got, is like, oh wow,
Yeah.
wow, there's a lot more that actually goes into this. And it's like it just kind of is like whenever I tell people, whenever I talk to people that have done like a lot of live shows and then they've done a voiceover gig, and it's like, oh, this is a lot different than
Yeah.
being up on the stage. Yeah. It's night and day, apparently. Yeah,
It really
it's
is. Yeah.
literally how it is. Yeah.
And you know what? It's so interesting, your observation, and it's so true, because let's say, for example, as an actor, on camera actor, even as a stand up, you've got lights, makeup, wardrobe, props. You can add all kinds of things. When you're behind the microphone in voiceover, you need to bring all of those worlds and all of those disciplines and all of those ideas into it, but all you have is your voice. So that's, to me, that was a big lesson. And just so to share this with someone who's listening, if they have an eye toward, or an ear or a voice toward getting into voiceover, as soon as I got my agent, I lucked out, got an agent. First thing she did, she had me take a voiceover class, and she had me take 2 animation classes. So I would recommend that to anybody. If you're just starting out, or you think you have some talent, or you have some talent, don't be afraid. Get into a class, because not only are they great fun, you'll get to be able to work cold copy, you'll be working with other people, and you'll get out of that 6-8 week class with a number of recordings of yourself, which then theoretically could be used to build your first reel or your reel.
Who were the instructors, if you remember,
Oh,
like of
absolutely.
the classes? Yeah.
Sure. I studied with Susan Silo in Los Angeles, Sue Silo.
Oh yeah, Susan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I studied with the famous Sue Blue,
Oh yeah.
who's famous not only of animation voice, animation director, and then of
Yeah.
course the incredible teacher that really put me over the animation top when I took his class twice, the great Pat Fraley.
Oh my God, Pat, man, all of these people are just legends. So like
Totally.
if you mention a name and I'm just like, I know this person, and I know this person.
Oh yeah. So I mean,
Yeah.
between Sue Silo, Sue Blue, and Pat Fraley, that was like those were master classes in voiceover.
Yeah, and of course they've done extensive work themselves. Like, I mean, Pat Fraley, like Ninja Turtles, and just Susan with like Transformers, and the other Susan with TV animation. So, like,
Countless.
seriously, list of credits. Like, I just cannot even just mention it all here. So,
Honest to God, yeah.
yeah, that's just
10 years.
yeah, that is really amazing because there's still a lot of, if I were to plug this right now, there's a lot of great coaches that are like still working in LA that I recommend, like, Charlie Adler, Bob Bergen, Richard Horvitz, and Crispin Freeman, and countless others
Yes.
that they're just wonderful people. And yeah, and it's just, it's so important because I just talked with this. I was just telling somebody else yesterday, which the interview should be coming up later today if if stars align. There is nothing wrong with getting training. Like every actor, like I mean I know there's probably a few that have actually made it, that have gotten that booked a lot of work. They didn't really do much training, like a lot of training, but like for classes and workshops, like everybody is at least studying with someone. And there's gonna be that one coach or teacher that is gonna be like a game that's gonna change someone's life. Like it's gonna
Exactly.
be a huge life changer. So like there's gonna be that one coach that is like, I've never thought of it before. That's brilliant. That's
Yes.
just genius. Yeah.
And you know what's
So it's
great?
so great that you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah. And
Good lesson.
what's great about training is it the coaches you mentioned and the one that I mentioned, they are good people at the core and they really know their business. And so they're very inspirational. And when you do something that's interesting, like you just said, they go, that was great. Develop that character, develop that habit. It's supportive. And I think a lot of us, when we're starting out, especially, we need that positive reinforcement. Because, our friends go, oh, yeah, it's a cute voice. That's funny. But these professionals in the industry, they can hear the marketability of something, or they can hear the raw talent that, when developed and nurtured, can become a marketable talent. And that feedback is important, especially in the formative time.
Oh yeah, totally. So let's talk about some of your work. So you've done commercials, you've done gigs for like General Mills, NBC, Warner Brothers, Fox, Disney, and just the list just goes on. And you've also done a lot of animation work. So let's go. We're just gonna kind of scroll through some of your career for a little bit. So
Okay.
yeah. Um, and I usually ask, like, what are some of your favorite gigs? But honestly, what were some of the ones that really stood out to you the most? Like, what were the ones that you really enjoyed working on and that it just, you just had an absolute blast working on? And if possible, can you also name some of the characters or roles that you've done that you find the most relatable to you?
That's a really great question.
Yeah.
Well, I've always loved my work with Disney as an animation character actor. There was a character that you may recall back in the day, like mid '90s. It was a very famous French character called Marsupilami.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. I'm
Hey,
actually just rewatching it.
oh really?
Binging it. Yeah, I just decided to go on like a Disney, afternoon binge and like, yeah, was it raw tunage or
Yes,
marsupial?
very good, very good.
Yeah, because I think Marsupilami, I think he got his own show, if I'm not mistaken.
Very
I
good.
don't know
Yeah.
which one came first,
Raw
Marsupilami or
tuna
Road.
came first.
Yeah, okay.
Right. But anyway, this was a French character, came over to Disney, licensed it to bring it into the United States, and they were doing a big casting call looking for the voice of Marsupilami. And this is kind of, I have on my website in my voiceover animation section. I was once told that if you want to have a solid animation career, do impersonations of famous people poorly and impersonations of family and friends spot on. So
Yeah.
when I auditioned for Marsupilami, I did kind of this hybrid combination of a friend of mine and his sister, the way they talked, and he kind of talked like this. What are you talking about? All right, man, I'll meet you downstairs. It's gonna be a lot of fun. Come on, Jerry. That kind of like this funny little thing. And then I exaggerated a little bit, and that's how I booked Marsupilami for Disney. And we started by doing raw tunage. It was just like a half hour of a couple of different little shows, 6, 7 minutes each. And Marsupilami had a little 6, 7 minute segment. And back then, it was just me and the famous Jimmy Cummings.
Jimmy
Jimmy
Cummings,
Ford.
yeah.
Yeah. So Jimmy
Need,
would
do we,
do,
need I go on? But yeah,
no, I
he's
mean, Jimmy,
just,
yeah.
yeah,
You say his name and it speaks volumes, right?
yeah.
So I basically did Marsupilami, and then Jimmy did all the other characters. Yeah.
So many characters. Like he was like Disney's, he was the guy that you just could not escape, like in the 80s and 90s. Like
Oh God.
especially Disney.
Yeah.
Especially Disney.
And who? Why would you want to escape him? He was so good. All his characters, man,
Yeah.
hilarious and interesting, and he's a phenomenal voice actor. Yeah. But so off of that, Disney gave us our own half hour called Marsupilami. And Jimmy and I had so much fun doing that because it was just the two of us, and we would get together one day every week, and we would do an episode of the show. And like I said, Jimmy would do most all of the characters. He'd do like some crazy uh, warrior is from the jungles, and then of course he'd do like an Australian explorer scout, and then I would do Marsupilami and then maybe like a vulture that sounded like one of the Beatles, and we would just have so much fun. That was a riot. Directed by the great Jenny McSwain, of course.
Love Ginny. Yeah. It's like, dude, it's like every time, yeah, like Ginny McSwain, Andrea Romano, like
Oh yeah.
I am just the guy who does research on pretty much a lot of the LA people. So it's like if I start like, getting excited or giddy just hearing somebody, just that's just natural. It's just kind of how I am. So yeah, I'm
Sure.
like,
Well, those were exciting people.
yes, yeah,
Yeah. And then
yeah,
I used to
like
do. I remember doing. I was big a part of the Pink Panther series for our friends at MGM, I believe. And that was Kelly Ward and Maria Estrada, and that was so much fun. And I would always play the incidental crazy characters that the Pink Panther would encounter, like Johnny Chucklehead and all these other creatures. And what I loved about working with Kelly Ward and Maria, a lot of times they would bring me in and they'd say, "Steve, we brought you in because we don't know what we want." And then they would show me a couple of renderings of the character, and I would do 2 or 3 voices, and whichever one they laughed the most on, they'd go, "Okay, do that guy." So that was so much fun because there was so much creative freedom, and we were creating on the spot. So those were unforgettable sessions too.
yeah. And I know that yeah, you've done a lot of work for Disney. And you've done announcements before, like I just realized that you did like Digimon, Totally Spies, and just the credits are just like, they just keep on piling up. But I think another character that people may recognize you for is Nosedive Flashblade from the Mighty Ducks series. So yeah,
Oh,
tell us a
I
little
was going to
about
bring
that.
it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, that was going to bring up the Mighty Ducks. So
yeah.
much fun. So much fun.
Right,
Disney
right.
production and great cast. I mean, the list goes on with the cast. I mean, that was Tim Curry was in that cast. Jim Belushi was in that cast. Um,
Man, I love Tim Curry.
Yeah, so April Winchell was in that cast. Brad Garrett, so many funny people, and that was just so much fun. And again, we that's back in the day, and they still do that to a certain extent. But everybody was in the room at the same time. They'd have 10 microphones set up.
Wow, this was back when everybody was actually like, I mean, I know that some studios, I mean, I know that like Cartoon Network and Nickelodeon especially, like they have all the actors in the same room, but now with with what we're going through right now, everybody's doing it from remote recordings, and it's nothing like being in a room full of with a lot of these amazing people. It's just nothing quite like it because the chemistry and the, you know, how y'all would just play off of each other, it just comes across like it's just so authentic and it just makes the experience all the more fun.
Oh, absolutely. And I
Absolutely.
write and
Yeah.
produce a lot of music. And as much as, we're in the obviously the nonlinear digital platform world, I still love to get live players in a room for the same reason that I love having all the animation people in the same room. As you're saying, we play off each other. There's a kinetic energy. Somebody does something that inspires a response that isn't written, and that to me is, and once it's produced in the show and mixed and added to the overall piece, people can feel that energy. Like the famous screenwriter Robert McKee used to say, whatever energy you're creating and you're using when you're writing a script, that energy will go from the screenplay to the screen. And I feel the same way when you're recording with a bunch of people in the room doing a cartoon. There's a collective energy, and that really can serve the greater good.
Oh, totally. So, for your theater work, just out of curiosity, like if I'm not sure if you're still doing like live shows or anything, but would you like to, if time permits, because I know we're still, like into this whole in this whole, spiel that is going on. So if you were to do like more live shows, would you go back, return to your like theater and live performance roots if you had the opportunity to, or you're already doing that right now?
Very good question.
Yeah.
Well, I've done two full-length solo shows that were a combination of storytelling and stand-up, and they were multimedia. One was called Wherever I Go, There We Are. And then my second show, 2016, I believe, was called The Laugh Supper, LAF, Laugh. And The Laugh Supper was a musical comedy, stand-up, like narrative through line. But I'm sort of musing right now, and I'm some pages into it, a bona fide musical with me as the narrator, sort of like what Thornton Wilder did in Our Town with a narrator, and then he keeps throwing it back to the action. So I'm in the early stages of writing that type of animal, and with an eye toward putting it up live. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, that's something that you could just, share, just self-promote,
Yeah.
to the listeners out there. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so much fun because it's music and comedy and storytelling, and those are all the things I love. And to get those all under one umbrella, for me, is very satisfying.
Yeah, totally. So, if you were to list like anybody, like inspirations or influences, like besides, the coaches that you've worked with, like that you mentioned earlier, who would you also cite as, the people that you would want to include in your life that who were some of your biggest like cheerleaders, supporters, and the people who really got your foot in the door in this business?
Oh, wow. What a beautiful question.
Yeah, and people that you cite as inspiration. Yeah, essentially.
Well, I gotta tell you,
Shout outs.
yeah, shout outs go back. I take it back to when I was a little kid, like my parents, like my mom, her people, she was Italian. All of her people were funny, good storytellers, musicians. So she was always encouraging me to pursue acting and to pursue comedy and stuff. Um, and then my dad, I always have to thank him because a man of very few words, but great like native intelligence. And when my dad was talking to me about what I wanted to do for a living, he said a few good things. This one I'll never forget. It stayed with me to this day. Because I said, well, I want to do voices and I want to write and I want to do comedy and I want to do all kinds of creative stuff. And, he was a cop and a bricklayer. My mom was a homemaker. And my dad said, do what you love, the money will follow. And I trusted him. And I'm really grateful that he gave me that sage wisdom, because that's what I did my whole life. I pursued something that excited me, that I was passionate about. I never once chose a job because I thought it would make me a lot of money. I chose a job, I chose an idea because it excited me, because I was passionate about it. And fortunately, I've been blessed enough to generate an income from those interests and passions and pursuits. So from there, I had a grade school teacher, creative writing teacher named Joan Serrell, Miss Serrell, who was very inspirational. And then in college, I had a terrific creative writing teacher, oral interpretation teacher named Thomas Nevins, Dr. Nevins, and he was very inspirational. And then, of course, in Washington, D.C., the late, great Art Ahrens, who had a great company in Georgetown called Words and Company, who took me under his wing and let me sell for him, and then let me write with him. And then, of course, Chuck Bloor in Los Angeles, who gave me my start as a voiceover guy. And then just been incredible people along the way. The late, great comedian John Candy. John hired me to write on his radio show called Radio Candy. He's a Canadian. There's a connection. But John gave me a shot, brought me in, got me into the Writers Guild. And then just great producers like the famous, godfather of reality television in Los Angeles, named Arnold Shapiro. Arnold was the executive producer for The Life of Rescue 911. He won an Academy Award for Scared Straight. He did 7 seasons of Big Brother. He was a very multi-Emmy Award-winning television producer. Arnold hired me when I was 27 to write a couple of educational films for him. When he could have hired any writer, but he gave me a shot because he liked a song I had written. He liked a song I'd written called "I Love You" and the other vowels too. So you never know. You just put your ideas out there and you get the meetings, and if people can feel your authenticity and your humility and your genuine passion, they give you a shot. And I'm fortunate to say that I've had a lot of angels along the way that have, hooked me up.
Godspeed, John Candy. Yeah, I also really love. I mean, he was just also another like great actor and great comedian.
Oh, yeah.
He was one of the best ones out there. Yeah. So, um, I guess on that note, so what plans do you have? Like, where do you see everything moving forward? Like, with live, anything in general, and just stuff that you want to share that you're working on, and just, I guess now we're get approaching the end of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Little talk.
Um, well, personally, I'm just having a really nice time. I'm building a little Japanese tea house on my property. Me and my buddy, who lives
Nice.
down the road. I got this great handyman. I kind of got him with the house back in the day, and he's retired now and everything, but he comes over every day and we work on this little Japanese tea house, and it's really cool, learning a lot from him. And then I have 4 scripts. I have 2 half-hour comedies, one of which has been doing pretty well in competitions. And then I have 2 full-length screenplays, another one of which has done really well in competitions that I'm looking to set up in the new year. They're all, well, 3 of the 4 of them are comedy dramas. And then the other one's just kind of a straight romantic war story, if you will. So I'm working on those projects. And then in addition to writing the musical, and which the musical sort of ties into my memoir, they're kind of doing them both simultaneously because they both have similar thematic qualities. But yeah, so that's what I'm doing, just enjoying my family and enjoying nature, and trying to stay creative as possible, and building a tea house, even though I really don't drink tea.
Oh, that's a first. Yeah, so that's nice that you're still keeping yourself, productive, today, and you're still just doing your thing, and that's very important, you know,
Yeah, and then I
as a
work
jack
every
of all
day
trades.
for,
Yeah.
yeah, I'm a Mac of all trades, but yeah, and I'm
Yeah.
still working every day for NBC late night. I do the Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon and late night with Seth Meyers. So I record those. I record with those super creative team Monday through Friday, and both of those shows are great. Jimmy is such a massive talent and brings so much love and energy out into the world, and same with Seth Meyers. Giving us the news every night with a lot of humor and a lot of wisdom. And so I feel really blessed to be able to work with that crowd. And I've had that job since 2009, which is an eternity in my business.
Yeah, well, congratulations. I sincerely mean it. Yeah, that's like, man, so we're approaching like 15-ish. Wow. 14, I think. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
been
it's
a
pretty
while.
cool.
Yeah. Over a decade. So, yeah, way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah, so any last words that you want to say, like any farewell, last piece of advice, just to close us out on?
Oh, thanks, Robert. Well, I would just say to anybody who's got a dream in your heart and a little secret passion, um, just trust it. Just trust it. I came from very, very humble origins. Like I said, my father was a bricklayer and a homicide detective, and my mom was a homemaker. And I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and nobody that I knew did what I'm doing for a living at all. Um, so I just had these little inklings as a young dreamer and just took the next indicated step and followed my passion. And fortunately, Spirit provided by putting all kinds of wonderful people in my path. So if you have an idea, if you have a dream, if you have a profession that seems out of reach, don't believe that it's out of reach. Believe it's yours to have and pursue it with great joy. I think Martin Luther King, here we are just celebrating his birthday. Like I think he had so many great quotes, but one of his quotes was, earnestly discover what it is you're meant to do, then passionately set yourself to the doing of it.
Yeah.
So that's what I would say. Follow your passion, trust it. And as my son always says, follow your highest excitement.
Yeah. And where can people find you on, like websites, social media, and do you have any last words, like any goodbyes or anything that you want to say? So social media plugs, and then your final goodbye.
Okay, great. Yeah, you can hit me up on my website, just stevemackall.com. And then I'm on Instagram. That's pretty much the only place I hang anymore. And then and yeah, just thanks to everybody who's watched all the shows and uh, from Raw Tunage to Marsupilami to Mighty Ducks to Pink Panther. Thanks for your passion and for following me and for being open to laughing and having these little adventures. And yeah, and then my final note is just if you have a dream, trust it, follow it, because we need your unique expression. If you don't give it to us, we'll never get it.
Right. And yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. So with that note, thank you, Steve, for joining me today. And this will go up at some point. If not today, then most likely tomorrow. But regardless, hope everybody's doing well. And yeah, with that said, this is Robert Jackson signing out for today. And until then, see you later, folks, and stay creative. Love and laughter always. Bye.